Oh boy. Hello everyone. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. Let me turn my light a little bit so it's not shining directly on my face here. Let me turn it this way. There we go. Yeah, good evening guys. Keith KL Belvin here. Um I was sitting here tonight and I realized that I come on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for Unapologetically Keith, which normally covers my counseling and things of that nature. But I decided that I wanted to come on and have a conversation about my books tonight. There we go. And because you get so tied up with one aspect of what you're trying to do, and you tend to forget about the other. I mean, I'm still writing, but I don't talk about or promote my books as much as I should. And right now, because my focus is on something else, and I'm actually rearranging and reorganizing a lot of the things that I'm doing. So if you are watching on Facebook or YouTube Live or Periscope, give me a 1 or some type of emoji. Let me know that you're there, because I want to make sure that the chat is working, because I made that mistake the other night. And let me just double check, because I don't want to have the same problem I had the other day before I get started. I want to be able to converse with those who are on. And I made that mistake the other day. So let me see something here. I think I changed the setting the proper way. Yes. Okay. So it is working. Okay. Gotcha. So at least I know it's open to the public. So again, by all means, put a emoji up or a 1. Let me know that you are listening. And just want to discuss, I'm going to discuss my books, just to give you an idea of what I've written and a little bit about my writing process. And I am a 5-time published author. I literally forgot that I just wrote a short story, an ebook that I put out a couple weeks ago, a month ago, I think a month now. The days are blending together, so you have to excuse me if I don't seem like I just know this Sunday will make like 11 weeks that I've been kind of close to the house, and I know everybody is running to get back out. I'm not in any rush until I think things are a little bit better, but that's a different conversation for a different night. Okay, so let's get into the purpose. I don't want to waste anybody's time. And if you're watching on replay, by all means, make sure that you put replay in. If you're watching on replay, when you put a comment in, just put replay on. That way I know that you're watching on replay. I will go back and read all the comments and make sure that I address everyone who puts in a comment. So again, I want to thank you. So as I said to you before, I am wearing my author's hat tonight. So I am author Keith KL Belvin. I am the author. What's going on, Flex? I am the author of 5 different books. I am also a contributor to 5 different anthologies. I have won awards for fictional writing. I have won awards for a couple of my poems. So I am an award-winning author, and I have been featured in Ebony magazine. Tiff and I have been featured in Ebony magazine back in 2012. My books were also in Black Expressions Book Club, which was featured in Ebony, Jet, and Essence, Gigolo to Jesus, which I'll discuss that book in a little while. So yes, I am an author, and all of my books are always created with a purpose. All of my books tell a story, and then also inside the story tells another story. So, and that's part of my writing process. And I think that's why it's so difficult for me to just settle down and write. And I'm so far behind on a book that I should have had done that I just feel bad that it hasn't, but my life has been in constant motion. And so because of that, I have not been able to really just to sit down and finish lukewarm saint too, and I know I got some readers that are very disappointed in me, and I got that. I'm getting there, but this 2020 was the year I was supposed to have everything done, and all of a sudden we all got dealt this very difficult card. But I'm here and I'm blessed, so I can't complain. But okay, let's get into this. This is my first book here, um, A Man in Transition. And what makes this special is not just that it's my first book. Let me move that back so you can see it the right way. Man in Transition. This was my first published book. This was before I started Belvin Publishing, but I had the name. I didn't make Belvin Publishing an official business at the time, but this was the first book that I had, and I used the Belvin name because I knew I was going to create a business, but it took me 2 years to make the investment in starting my company. February 10th, 2010. So we have been in business for 10 years, Belvin Publishing, but this is the very first book of Belvin Publishing. And the cover was designed by Jessica Tillis, I think was her name. The only time that her and I worked together. And she did the cover for me. I think she did the typesetting at the time because that was before I had somebody else, but she did the typesetting for me at the time. And so I remember when I decided to put this together, like anybody else, I did some research and I asked some questions. And that's another thing, guys, always do your research. You want to know your market. You want to know what's popping. And with poetry, it's very difficult. And you're going to see a lot of folks have a lot of different comments when it comes to poetry. So to all my poets who are interested in doing poetry books, you really need to have an idea of what you want your poetry book to do. What do you want your poetry book to say, not just the words that are in it? So for me, when I came up with the title of Man in Transition, that's exactly what I was. I was a man in transition. And so what I did was I took a collection of my poems and I put them in book form, meaning how I created this was I wrote the book based on the spiritual man. Like, this book is a poetry book and it's not big, only 100, 150, 160 something pages. And I decided to tell a story, and this is what I mean by the story inside the story. So you get the poems inside the story. But the first chapter is spiritual, second chapter is romance, third chapter is fatherhood, fourth chapter is the educator, fifth is simple observations of the world, and then chapter 6, the man I used to be, and then you'll see it says contains adult content. And this is the last book that has any of the erotic work that I used to create. I used to be an erotic writer, and I used to be an erotic poet. And when I gave my life to the Lord, I changed all of that. And so this is the last published work of any of my erotic works. All my other stuff is locked up in a vault, and I don't know if I'm ever going to release it to the world. I've been told to change my name and release it under a synonym. I know I'm tired tonight. A pen name, excuse me. And I've thought about it, but I haven't done it. I've showed a couple of the pieces to some people, and people that used to follow me for the erotic purposes have said, "Come on, KL, you need to release that." Nah. So, and then so you can tell this is a while because I was born and currently live in South Jamaica, Queens at 40 years age. I'm 52 now, so 12 years. So this is my first book. And the funny thing about this was when everybody said don't write poetry, I could have listened, but that wouldn't make me Keith because I don't listen. And what I realized was I'm not going to sell poetry. So you say, Keith, hold on a second. That don't make any sense. How are you going to sell poetry and not sell poetry? How are you going to sell a poetry book and not sell poetry? Okay, I'll fill you in. What I decided to do was sell me, because I am the person behind the poetry. I wrote these poems. I wrote the narratives that are in here. I wrote the erotic stuff in here. So I'm going to sell people me. I'm going to introduce myself to people through what's in here and let folks know that this book in poetry form tells a story about who I am. And a couple of thousand books later, it was effective. And I only chose 3 pieces. I would only read 3 pieces from the book. And those 3 pieces I figured would connect to my target market. So the 3 pieces that I chose was one dedicated to my wife, of course, called Perfect Woman, page 26, if I remember correctly. Yep, page 26. Perfect Woman, If Only in My Mind. The other one was My Queen, which was dedicated to my mother. And another one is called I May Not Be Superman, but I'm Dad. Now, one piece connected to my wife who I love, one connected to my mother, and one connected to all of the brothers out there who have children who they are the non-custodial parent. And when I would give the story or the background behind those 3 pieces and read those 3 pieces, they would always hit home with the females in the audience and some of the men, but females are my target market. They understood. And some of the men got it. And it would always give people reason to support me because I was always real. And I'm not a performer, so I'm not a spoken word artist. So I don't perform. I'm a traditional poet, if there's a term to be used, because I read. But I try to read effectively, and I try to read to my audience so my audience can enjoy reading with me. And I found that I learned that from watching a brother one night at oh man, I can't think of the poetry spot in Manhattan. Oh, I was right here in the back, Bowery Poetry Club. And I remember when I was at the Bowery Poetry Club, I was watching this brother. He came out with a big book, and he sat this big book down, and he looked at it. Me and you tonight going, that's bold. Is she with a man? And then my man said, let me see, I got something for you. And he was like, you ready to make love to me, baby? And she was smiling. And my man read a deep piece. And for you poets out there, and of course, you can always steal as long as you give credit because you're going to own. But what I watched that night was that he didn't try to read to the room, he was there, but he read to her. And he knew the piece that he had picked was going to be a piece that was really to read to a woman. And then he drew the room in to what he was doing. I thought it was excellent. So I would do the same thing. And Perfect Woman is the piece that I would read more than anywhere else because Perfect Woman, and I would ask, does anybody believe that perfect? I would say no. And I was like, what if I could that it does? And gentlemen, if I could, I said, ladies, if I can prove to you that perfection exists, you're going to make that man buy you a book, right? And we'd have a nice conversation. And then I would read Perfect Woman to show that perfection does exist, even if it's only in my mind. And by bringing the crowd in, by reading to 1 or 2 people, the room would then feel what I was saying and then making sure that I read, not slow, but just slow enough that people can enjoy it and really engulf it. Or when I would read My Queen and explain to them that this is a piece that I wrote for my mom for Mother's Day because I just wanted to give her something as a gift a little bit different. And then when I would read I May Not Be Superman, but I'm Dad, and explain that if dads would just stop trying to be superheroes and just be a father to their children would elevate them to superhero status. Oh my gosh, mothers got that. So my target market understood exactly what I was doing. And it turned into a couple of thousand books later, which then opened up the door for me to now write this book. To date, I've sold more of this book than anything else. From Gigolo to Jesus, I've sold 10 or 12,000 copies of From Gigolo to Jesus. And that's been my most successful book. 10 to 12,000 copies. And the reason why was because this is my memoir. And this tells a story, and this cover was from a brother from Denver, I think. I forget what his name was. He still owes me some money, too. Yeah, let me see. Oh, yeah. His name is G8 Visual Designs. Yeah, he was out of Denver. Actually, a pretty good dude. And this was the back cover too. And you see, there's not no back language. And actually, this was the hardcover. This was the this is the book. These are the copies that Black Expressions Book Club created, where they here's the inside the dust cover, which is the back language that was on the back that they made part of what's name. Now this one here, and the reason why this has been the most successful book, because this is my story. I still use this now. I still sell these now. I just sold a couple not too long ago because this is where I put all my dirt. This right here tells you everything. Gigolo to Jesus walks you through my whole life. Every filthy detail of what I used to be when I was a whore. And all of the things, and I changed all the names to respect all the women that I had been with. And I put the number out there. I put the ridiculous number of women that I had been out there, not for people to be impressed with me, but for people to understand exactly what I was like and what I had become and all the filthiness. You even talk about the abortions and miscarriages. So we talk about my teenage years, sex versus love, the addiction. We talk about sex, abortions and miscarriages, being married the first time, big, beautiful women in the internet, becoming a father, the motel, hearing the Lord's voice and finding love, Bible study, praying, paying for your sins, my growing family, becoming a writer. And the reason why this book resonates with a lot of people is because this wasn't written for anybody but me. I wrote this for me. I wanted to put my dirt out so no one else could use it against me. I knew I was changing my life. I had changed my life. But I didn't want anybody from my past showing up and saying, psh. So here it is. And I put it in a book. Well, not every dirty detail, but enough that you get an idea of who I am. And I use it now as a door opener to counseling, believe it or not, especially because my target market is still women between the ages of 30, really 35 and 55, and more like 35 to 60. Most times single mothers, many married ones now that I've started counseling. And the reason why is because they take the book to be able to start a conversation with their boyfriends or husbands, baby daddies, and with some other coaching tips, I use the book as a door opener, and it allows men to come to the table and say, yeah, I was like that, or oh my God, he said all that. And then it allows people to have a conversation. So they use my dirt as a way to be able to converse with each other. And then we can actually start the work to fix it, because I talk about how I was able to make my own personal transition. It was very difficult to write. And it was very difficult to write because when you look back on your sinful past, but through eyes of a different person, you see the damage that you did to other people. And you can only say, I'm sorry, and then leave it alone. But when you know that women that have been with you can no longer have children because of abortions that they had carrying a child that you helped create, it's not a cool thing. And it wasn't until I got older that I understood the damage that miscarriages and abortions can have on a woman. So even as a Christian, I'm torn between pro-life, and I'm torn because I understand why women have abortions. And I'm not about to sit here and say to a woman that you shouldn't do it. I leave it alone, because I just say it's a woman's choice, because I know how devastating that can be for a woman. And I don't think any man has the right to tell a woman what to do with her body. If that's my position, that's my position. Even though I don't think it's the right thing to do, I just don't think it's my position to say, because I live with the guilt of what happened. And as I said, I can't change it. The only thing that I can do and what I do now is I try very hard to try to convince young men and older men not to go that route, not to put women in that position, even if they allow you to. And because I put my dirt out there, it actually opens up the door to like my Young Kings program. My mentor program is based on me. Actually, my Young Kings are reading From Gigolo to Jesus right now, that are incarcerated. And once early July is when I can actually start my Zoom classes with them. We're going to have those discussions because the goal is to try to help them when they get out to live productive lives. But it was a very difficult book to write. But I've seen the blessings that have come. Now this one here, book number 3, this one is Lukewarm Saint. Now this is the most undervalued of my books. And I messed up with this one. I'm gonna be honest with you. I messed up on this one. Cover design by Gregory Graphics out of Philadelphia. Fantastic dude. He's done, he did my covers and my bookmarks and stuff like that. And fantastic. Marissa McCracken is the other designer that I use for the other Belvin publishing authors. But this one here, Lukewarm Saint. This is Kevin Watkins, and you see he has 2 friends. Let me get this right. Oh, let me bring this down here. Oh, there we go. He has 2 friends, and then he has his mother and grandmother. And the reason why this book is undervalued is because this is my fictional story, my inspirational fictional story, but I really, really enjoyed writing this book. I really did. And it turned out to be a book that a lot of people liked, but I underpromoted it, undervalued it, and I didn't give it the berth that it deserved. And hence, I lost a lot of money and a lot of opportunities that I could probably still get back and probably will once I get finished. And this was book number 1 of a series. And it's a 3-part series. This is Lukewarm Saint. This is the first one. And then part 2 is Lukewarm Saint 2, Fox in the Hen House. And book 3 is Lukewarm Saint 3, Redemption. It's a great one. Thanks, Lisa. And I apologize for not getting you book 2. Thank you so much, Lisa. It's great to see that you're following me tonight. I said I was sorry earlier to you guys that enjoyed it, but this one was really undervalued and underpromoted and undermarketed. And I'll take the hit on that. And then just life got in the way more than anything else. But I really enjoyed writing this story because even my own mother, when she read the story of Kevin Watkins, that's the main character right here. And if you look at Kevin's face, it's very important because the covers on this series tells the story. So anything that I write, there's a story inside the story. All of my covers, by the way, tell a story too. So that's one thing. If you see, let me just go back real quick. I'm gonna go back to Lukewarm Saint in a second. If you see From Gigolo to Jesus, right? Those are faded pictures. But if you were to ever really get the book and look close, you're gonna see that those are faded pictures of women. But it's in my rear view. And if you look down here, you're gonna see it says Highway to Heaven. And then over here, where my hand is at, you're not gonna be able to see it on film, but I think if I can move it up some, you'll actually see there's a black Jesus off to the side. And then this one here, Man in Transition, if you look, he's just staring off to the side and he's up on the roof. And it was just a solid 2-part, but all my book covers tell a story. But back to this one here. So Kevin Watkins is a young Brooklyn educator. I think I know a little something about that. I used to be a Brooklyn educator who has 2 friends. One friend owns a strip club and one friend is a cat that was in the streets that's now into the church. And they're both pulling him in each direction. Both are saying to him, man, give in to who you know you really are. And he's fighting with himself. And then he has his mother and grandmother who are trying to explain to him that it was the love of women that destroyed your father and your grandfather, and you're heading in the same route. And the book was designed to ask you the question, thanks, Lise, was to ask you the question, how long can you tempt fate? How long can you just decide to do what you want to do, and then what's going to happen from that? And it's actually a very good story with a plot twist. I'll give you that. And I think when you read it, when you get to the end, you will dislike me a little bit, but it's okay. When I write, that's how I write. But I believe that the story, and the beautiful thing about this is everybody that's read this book has told me that they enjoyed it. And when I've gotten the feedback from it, I've had professional beta readers, and then of course I've sold copies. I'm not that many. I think a couple of hundred. I don't think I've sold 1,000 copies. Maybe. Yeah, I think I've sold about 1,000. Maybe a little less, about 800 or 900, but um, way less than I should have sold. And I didn't give this book its due, and I will make up for that as I finish the second one, which I'm so way behind. But the reason why this story holds weight is because anybody who's been torn, I need. Yes, you know what? And you will have. It was supposed to be done in 2020, but then Corona hit. I was actually trying to get everything done for a March release, actually April release, and got jammed up because of Corona. And you would think with all the time I have at home, I would get it done, but I've just been so busy with counseling and everything else. But I have 3 chapters to complete, and I actually had to go back and erase about 4 chapters because the book started to take a real bad turn because my head really wasn't into writing. And when I went back and looked at what I was writing, it didn't line up with what I was trying to say. And in Lukewarm Saint 2, Fox in the Hen House, it's important because it really is a bridge to the third book, but it's a book that stands on its own. And that's the way I write too, that if I never went back and wrote book 2 and 3, I wanted book 1 to stand on its own, book 2 to stand on its own, and book 3 to stand on its own. So it's Lukewarm Saint 1, Lukewarm Saint 2, Fox in the Hen House, Lukewarm Saint 3, Redemption and Restoration, excuse me. Yeah, Lukewarm Saint 3, Restoration. But all 3 books tell a story. All 3 books are connected, but all 3 books can stand on their own. So I got to get them out of here and get them done. But the reason why, if you look on the back, I didn't show you the back. Like you see his face on the back. So this is important, right? You see the mischievous smile. I know a little something about that dude. And you see the 2 friends that are like, okay. And then when you look on the back, you see that look of confusion. Well, the story explains where that look, it does stand on its own. Thank you. So at least you know what? Thank you, Lise. Hold on. Let me see if I can put that up tonight. There we go. So Lisa said it does stand on its own. There we go. Oh, even better. Let's put this one up. There we go. It's a great book. But yeah, it does stand on its own, Lisa. And I think and I was sad about that for a while. I'm not going to lie, because I sat down and I never read my work. Let me just say that I critique it, but I never really just sit down and read it to read. I sat down one night and I started reading Lukewarm Saint. And it was kind of the same way when I went back and read From Gigolo to Jesus. I didn't believe I had wrote it. I literally was like, I wrote this? And with Lukewarm Saint, as I was reading it, because I wrote the story, but I was captivated by the story. And even though I knew everything that was going to happen and everything, but when I got to the end, I was mad. And I was mad because I didn't give readers a chance to enjoy my work. I didn't market it. I didn't promote it. I didn't do the things that I was supposed to. And you know why? Because I was handling everybody else's work. I was out here publishing everybody else's work, making sure everybody else was straight, making sure Braven Publishing was growing, making sure Braven Consultant was growing. And I got away from my work. And I've been changing that over the last month or so here in the house with this whole Corona thing. And so I'll get to it in a second, but I am definitely going to put that together, because now I had to figure out, how do I use my books to enhance my counseling? And I realized that they're a critical part because of what I can do with them. But I'll get to all that in a real second. This right here, guys, was my this is my nonfiction book. I guess you can call it self-help, but this is Our Bond is Our Gift, an interpersonal look at relationships by Keith K.L. Belvin. I have a master's in human service counseling and a master's in education. And this one was designed to offer an insight into relationships. Actually, it is a collection of live videos that I've done over the last 4 or 5 years. And I put them into book form because I felt that it would make for a good way to help people. Now, this one I've sold quite a bit. I would say somewhere between 1,500, more like 2,000. Yeah, I think 1,500 that I've sold. And that's not counting the books I've given away. And the chapters in this one, anger and frustration, great motivators for change, revealing your truth through transparency, the corruption of bad communication, when the rain won't go away, handling the bad days, the importance of recreating yourself, which I use quite often, showing people how to change their lives, the power of life and death in a word, where's the fruit, judge a tree by its fruit, fixing men to heal their relationships, why are young men angry, they are still out there, part one, a good man, part two, a good woman, and folks better work it out. And every chapter has um, conversation starters and story. It has self reflections at the end of each chapter, designed to create conversation. Another great book. Hey, thank you, Lise. I'm going to take you on the road with me. But yes, designed to give you a chance to self reflect, whether it's just you reading it or you're starting a conversation with the group. So if book clubs are reading this, it has an opportunity to ask questions at the end of each chapter as a way to stimulate conversation. So, like in this one, it says self reflection, bonding with the good and bad days. Every one of us will deal with good and bad days. This is not an option, it is a straight fact. Because of this, we need to be equipped with dealing with all the days we encounter. If we know we will experience ups and downs, then our goal should be to combat the evil days and celebrate the good ones. Number one, take a moment to list every positive thing about you. Number two, if you are in a relationship, what are positive things about your mate and your relationship? Number three, if you are single, what are positive things you can bring to the table in a relationship? Number four, the positive things you thought of from questions 1 through 3 should become mantras, things that you say to yourself in mind or aloud every day. So the more you have them in mind, the more you will come to believe and accept them. Number five, how can you celebrate the good days for yourself and your relationship? And number six, when wicked days occur, how do you react? Think of how a bad day typically affects you individually as your mate as your mate, and their adverse reactions you can eliminate or turn into positive effects. So again, this book was designed, and this cover was done by, who did this cover? I believe this one was Gregory Graphics also. Yes. So this one was done by Gregory Graphics out of Philadelphia. So he did those two covers for me. Great dude too. Very great dude. Design a great day is his business mantra. Design a great day for yourself. And he's a graphic designer who went from using coffee shop Wi-Fi to owning his own brick and mortar. And he's hanging in there through this COVID situation too. So I try to surround myself with good people. So those are the 4 physical books that I've written. And then my most recent one is a short romance called The Choice. It's a remake of a story that I wrote in 2009. We won an award for the book that it was in, but I rewrote it, repackaged it, and submitted it out as an ebook. It's only 7,000 words or something like that. It's like $1.99 on my website. But again, it was to jumpstart my writing. I sat down and said, let me try to work on this first and then get my behind back to finish in Lukewarm Saint 2. So you see, my writing was kind of like all over the place. And when you're trying to get one thing together, another thing suffers. And I think anybody who's out here as an entrepreneur trying to make things work, you really got to try to nail down what your one thing is. And that's what I'm learning right now. But I got away from something that I really enjoyed, which is writing. And I had to stop looking at it as a business and get back to just enjoying the fact that I used to write a story like every week. And when I was doing erotic stories, but of course that was centered around the flesh because I was trying to get into panties. So it just made it easier to know that if I wrote this story, it was going to help get me closer to panties. That's why if you look in From Gigolo to Jesus, where it says the big girls and the internet, um, pardon me, I was pimping. And when you're pimping, you got to have things to pimp with. And so I use my writing and my poetry. Okay, here we go. There's a point of big women, big beautiful. This is page 57 in From Gigolo to Jesus. The chapter is Big Beautiful Women in the Internet. There's a point in every man's life when he finds a particular activity to fill his free time. Sometimes sometimes something that entertains him and keeps his attention for long periods of time. For some men, it could be the local bar, it could be the pool hall, golf, watching sports on television, or even playing cards. My activities were mostly centered around whoever plus size women would be. I have always been an outgoing and sociable person with the ability to meet women anywhere, but one thing I can say is when I stumbled upon the BBW world, I was like a piranha. BBW is an acronym for Big Beautiful Women, and there is a whole society out there full of BBWs and the people who love them. The BBW consists of smaller organizations that plan various events geared towards plus size women. This includes parties, shows, vacations, shopping, and whatever anyone can think of to get BBWs together. Yes, you. All right, Lise. Thank you so much. Good night. Yes, you knew that man. Yes, that man was bad, very bad. The BBW. The BBW community is the most lucrative environment I could have been in order to fill my appetite. It is full of women that society constantly bombards with the idea that they are not sexy and should not like themselves. Women who go to public places and hope that they have seats that will accommodate their size. Women who go into parties or a club to have a great time like everyone else and then are treated like exhibits at the zoo when people stare, pointing, and even laughing. So big, beautiful women and their admirers decided to create their own venues that they could feel comfortable in. You can find a BBW event in pretty much most of the major cities. But in 1989, when I came across my first BBW party, it was like a secret club. My friends and I were traveling to Manhattan to go to our strip club every week, which we did. I would notice these BBWs going into a club on 44th Street and 8th Avenue. See, I'm dating myself. In Manhattan. One night I decided to stop in and meet BBWs from every bit of the spectrum: tall, short, black, white, every shape you could imagine. Believe it or not, the only problem I had with going that night was that there was so many of them were overtly promiscuous. Yes, I know I'm a hypocrite, but yes, there's a double standard. I could sleep with as many women as I wanted, but as soon as I found out that some of the women I liked were loose, I didn't want anything to do with them. So I never returned to the club. How about that? I'm out here trying to get panties, and I'm mad that they just giving it away. Yeah. Yeah, you're going to read a lot of this foolishness in here. And then it wasn't until 1997 when cruising Yahoo clubs on the internet that I came across more BBW clubs. They all had individual sites and catered to whatever type of BBW you were attracted to. Mostly all the sites had one thing in common, though: Club Peppers. It seemed to be the most happening place for BBWs. They held monthly events, and it was a magnet for every woman of size that had internet connections. The first night I went, there was wall-to-wall women. It was like the wolf being allowed to party with the chickens. How long is he going to let his food sit around before he eats? And you can read the rest. You can kind of imagine. But yeah, I put it all out there. And anybody that traveled in those circles knew who Fats X was, and Fats X was my name. Fats was my nickname. X was my tribute to Malcolm X. So here I am running around with a Malcolm X tattoo on my arm. and I'm living as far away from the way Malcolm would have a man act. Actually, there it is. Uh, there it is. See, Fats is my nickname. X is my tribute to Malcolm X, and so I wonder why they call me Fats. But but yeah, so from Gigolo to Jesus tells a lot, and I put a lot out there, and I said a lot, and I made some people mad. But the one thing I did not do was use anybody's real name. I was never going to put a woman in a bad spot with her husband or fiance or boyfriend